Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Classroom to Corner Office Career Talks with Chris, a podcast to help you navigate the wild world of work, whether you're looking to find that first job or looking to make a career transition. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Thomas Weinandy, who holds a PhD in economics and is here to take us through how he got to this point in his life, that education explored, and the work that is being done with that knowledge. So, Tom, thanks for joining today and imparting your wisdom on the world.
No, I'm excited for the invitation, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. What does one do with this PhD in economics, and how did you arrive to explore that education journey and now put it to use in the workforce?
Yes, so I'll start with where I'm at now. So I'm an economist at the cashback app Upside. So Upside, for listeners who are not familiar, it's a top-rated app where users earn cash back on everyday purchases like gas stations, convenience stores, restaurants, and grocery stores. And I've been with Upside for 3 years now. I work on researching the macroeconomy, industry trends, and consumer behavior. But in general, I'm doing data analysis. And, so that's been the hat that I've worn the past several years is working with data of different formats and capacities. But you also asked how I got here. So I worked in higher education for 5 years. I thought I wanted to go into the nonprofit sector, but realized that there were a lot of good people working there already. But that I noticed there was this exponential increase in the amount of data being created in the world, but only a linear increase in the number of people analyzing that data. So I thought I could make a bigger impact by pursuing that opportunity gap. So I decided to, go from working. I had a business background, and so I used economics as the bridge to get me into data analytics. So went to graduate school and focused on classes that allowed me to be able to analyze big and messy data sets, basically taking what we like to call unstructured data, data that's in like a raw or very unfiltered format, and being able to draw insights from that. And then I also wrote a dissertation. It was about how taxi and Uber drivers respond differently to changing fuel prices. So with that experience, Upside, because you can earn cash back at gas stations, the company thought that was a very good background that I had a dissertation focused on fuel prices and was already familiar with doing data analysis in that area. So it just kind of became this like very happy fit.
Yeah, so you live in a world of numbers, and I'm sure quantitative and qualitative data, right? So with that and what you are doing now and how you've prepared yourself, I'm sure there are a lot of technical skills, programs that you have had to learn to be efficient in this practice, as well as not only sifting through all of the data, but finding ways to visualize that, right? For people to make decisions, whether you're part of the decision making or whether you're passing that information along. So, what were some of those, we'll say, more technical skills that you acquired along the way that have helped you in your current role?
Yes, yes. So what they don't tell you in school about data analysis is that most of the time you spend is just cleaning data. And that sounds kind of monotonous, but there is a lot of there's still creativity involved in that and a lot of problem solving to take data that's in a very, like I said, an unstructured format. Like, for example, you might have something like a simple social media post might be it might be set up in a structure where it's just all this like nested fields. So if you think of something with like lots and lots of parentheses where all the information is kind of like put into very smaller curly braces, and you have to be able to like take that information out into a table format, and then you can start, starting to do insights. So that cleaning process can take a lot of work. So there was skills in order to work with that. That included like the programming language SQL to be able to query data. And then there's, of course, the skills to analyze the data that allows you to take it from that structured format into like actual statistics and insights. And then probably the most important step after that is then to communicate that data. So that's with visualization, and that can be with either there's different libraries within Python I'll use, or dashboards like Power BI I'm familiar with, or just, some good old fashioned Excel or a Google Sheets chart where you need to make sure that when you're doing data analysis that anytime you're presenting information, you're wrapping it into some kind of like story or insight or purpose where it's not just a statistic, it's something that is actionable and insightful to the viewer.
Yeah, and with that, if you're looking at all this information daily and you're creating these visualizations for people to consider in decision making, what is that one thing, maybe one or two if you have it, that you have done all the analysis and made some recommendation or been part of a team making a recommendation that has come to fruition?
So something I've been working on lately is to be able to augment not just like some of that raw data of how Upside works, but to be able to bring in additional stories with it. So there can be both quantitative data as well as qualitative data. And so with Upside, there's many different retailers that have joined our platform, but because it's the retailers that are ones that are funding those cashback offers, we need to, you know, be able to communicate what is the impact Upside is having to their business. Like, what are the, like, if all of these consumers that we're sending to their business is like increasing their bottom line, we need to demonstrate that. And it's not always just with, actual like numbers to say, oh, we've impacted your business by like this many dollars. We need to be able to tell the story about how this is benefiting their business as well. So, one of my recent initiatives has been supporting different survey methods to be able to allow consumers to give quotes about why they appreciate Upside offers being available near them and why that's having them choose one business over another. So, it's not just about, the quantitative, but rounding it out with qualitative and stories as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure for, those that are interested in getting into this world, the storytelling piece is probably something that's not undersold, but maybe unappreciated, right? Because you think about, oh, I'm going to be sifting through all this data and this information. I'm going to be able to create this report, this analysis, and it's like, well, now we need to tell the story, and that's like something that goes back to, I think, some of maybe those initial interests that you showed, right, in nonprofit work, which is very much storytelling in the end, telling the story about an organization, who they serve, how they serve them, and the impact on that community or region. So, what had you gained from maybe those early interests and that early work, more in that nonprofit interest space, that have served you well in what you do now?
So anyone who's going into business, it's important to have empathy with consumers. So it's not just enough to like, in marketing to be able to say that consumers like they want to have this, so we're going to deliver this good or service to them. What empathy takes and what I learned from working with nonprofits is that it's important to be able to like hear consumers, understand what are their needs and what are their shortcomings. And it's only like the best and most successful business person will be able to like listen sincerely to what people need and be able to find ways to help address those problems. And so, business is often like called, it can be perceived as cold hearted, but really it takes empathy and understanding customers to be able to, meet them where they're at.
Yeah, and that's well said. And obviously, you helped, or you guess you developed that, or created some of that skill in storytelling through your previous work, which is good. So along the way, right, you've picked up different skills, whether it's technical, soft skills. What do you think have been the skills that have served you at each step of your journey well? Whether those, again, technical skills, soft skills, or maybe just something you've developed, a mindset that has helped you find success and sort of continue along this path?
I think it's important to be able to risk failure and do things that are hard. I mean, the most rewarding things in life tend to be ones that have some kind of risk-taking component and have an opportunity where it might not work out, but they are the most rewarding. So I've tried to like pursue different areas that have challenged me a lot. So when I started my current job, like I was very weak in, the being able to use SQL. And so that is something that like I had to like either very quickly learn or I just would not have succeeded in my job. And if I had only pursued jobs where I was like I had 100% of the skills, then I would have ended up with something that was like suboptimal. But that's something that, with any business, businesses are usually working with like lots of different platforms, lots of different tools. And it's not necessarily expected that like any employee is going to know 100% of them. If you kind of go into a job knowing 90% of them, then that's great. And then if you're willing to learn that extra 10% to be able to like bring you up to speed, then that is what's going to make a successful company and what's going to make for an employee to succeed at that company as well.
Yeah, and that's been a common theme, right? Many of the interviews is, "Hey, you are never going to be 100% prepared for that next role," right? You can be as prepared as you can be, but in the end, there is that gap of that learning curve, whether that's with systems used, whether that's with skills, or whether that's just with experience, and you have to find a way to close that gap whenever you want to really grow your career, right? Because that's a
We're
piece
all
of it.
perpetual students.
Right. Yeah, we all are, and that's lifelong learning also been a good theme that is been supported by what you said as well. So one of the the growing, not even call it a trend at this point, a growing area, artificial intelligence, and I'm sure that there are more than one, two, three, four, five, a dozen ways that this is impacting the work that you do. So I'd be interested to hear what has been your experience, we'll just say over the last 2 to 3 years with artificial intelligence in your work? And maybe what are some of those new uses or next step uses that you think will impact you and people that are in the field that you currently work in?
Yes, AI is, rightfully an important topic about how it's impacting work. So I could like, cite different research studies right now, but instead I could like tell you a story because as we talked about, wrapping data in a story is, much more memorable to people. So there was a researcher who wrote a book in 2015, James Besant, where he looked at what is the impact of automated teller machines, just ATMs, on bank branches. So what's happening is that like these ATMs, when they would come in, they would replace some of the work of these bank tellers because they're handing out money. But at the same time, it's allowing banks to be able to open branches much more cheaply. So he looked at the question of, is this going to substitute jobs or is it going to complement jobs? And at the end, he found that, although there were any single bank branch could operate with fewer bank tellers by having this new machine. So they, would hire fewer people at that single branch, but the bank would be able to open more branches, and overall, that increased the number of jobs for bank tellers. So AI is, just one of those areas where it's both substituting and complementing our work at the same time. And it's going to be those who are going to like succeed in this world with AI are those who are best able to find the skills that are complemented by AI and not lean too much into skills that are doing exactly what AI is able to do. So for my own job, I use artificial intelligence daily to help with my own coding, become a lot faster programmer, being able to do a lot more data analysis, as well as idea generation to be able to come up with new, better research questions or better critique what insights I have found to be able to like stress test and see, is there anything that I'm missing that, I should be further explaining with this research?
Yeah, and that's I think that's well said, and I think a lesson to any, especially those maybe to be graduates or those that are entering the workforce right now. What are some not just responsible ways in using these tools, but what are ways to support what you're doing? Right? Using it as a brainstorming buddy, using it as a stress test on something that you've developed along the way. What would maybe be something that you would caution against those that are either in college, about to graduate, or new to the workforce in their uses of artificial intelligence in their day-to-day work life?
So I would say don't worry about AI, but be able to leverage it as a helpful coworker. If you try to avoid AI, it will catch up to all of us. But I think what's important is to be able to, I mean, the best advice I can have is if you're looking to explore a new career, find an industry that's growing and then be a very technical savvy person within that industry, whether that's, healthcare, whether that's engineering right now is still continues to do well, but like find an area where there's, strong demand where you have a passion for. And then if you're staying on top of the technology within that area, then you're going to be able to like continue to leverage AI in a way that's helpful and is benefiting your career without falling behind.
Yeah, and falling behind is probably going to be easier to do, right, with the advances in not just artificial intelligence, but all the technologies used across industries. So staying up to date is crucial to not only demonstrating your worth in that industry in the workforce, but also, retaining employment potentially.
Yes.
Again, being a continuous learner and a lifelong learner in everything.
And I mean, the benefit of AI is that it can help us do our least favorite tasks as well. So, the way economists like to think about jobs is that it's not just this like single job that anyone has, that is this collection of tasks. Because if we think about it, like, any job I've had at least, like there's like 20 different things I'm doing as part of that job. It's not just one thing where I'm like tightening some bolt on an assembly line. So the benefit that AI has is that if you can like break down those tasks into those that are like easily done by AI and those that are still better done by a human, a lot of those like AI ones are just the very tedious things that you might not have wanted to do in the first place. So it'll definitely change jobs, but I think for the better.
Yeah, especially for those in those jobs, may make them more enjoyable, especially if you're able to not eliminate, but maybe accelerate the completion of tasks that are least desirable.
Yes. Yes.
So that's good. So you talked about a little bit with your dissertation and how that helped maybe lead into your current role with the current company. Is there any specific insight from your dissertation? You can shout out how we can read it potentially, but is there any specific insight that came as a result of your research that you think not only helped get you into the role that you're in now, but may be useful in the future, like for further research or for application?
Well, my recommendation for anyone who's still in school is to identify research projects that can help you get a job in the future. I mean, that's what I did. Is that I intentionally sought out a project that had large data sets where I would be able to demonstrate my skill from there. So I think that's the first piece of advice that I would recommend. Yeah, one insight from that paper. So I was looking at how Uber drivers and taxi drivers respond differently to changing fuel prices. I don't recommend you read it. It was very dry because that's what dissertations are supposed to be. But what I found in that research is that Uber drivers, because they have the opportunity to drive or not drive in response to what are the gas prices at a particular time, they had a lot of flexibility to be able to shift the times that they worked based on those costs. Now, Uber drivers and taxi drivers both have to pay for their own fuel, but taxi drivers, because I was looking at New York, where they have like a very rigid system of how many taxis that are allowed to be on the road at a given time, they did not have that same flexibility where they couldn't adjust their working hours based on something like fuel prices. So I found that they were kind of like stuck in place when Uber drivers had more flexibility as well. So that was an insight, but we could easily pull that into a metaphor of needing to be flexible at work and understanding that opportunity is always changing and that we should pursue it accordingly.
Yeah, there we go. And for everybody, how many pages was this?
Oh, it's been a while. Over 100? I don't know. I haven't read it since I since I
We just
finished
got
it.
the 30 to 40-second synopsis in under 100. So don't worry about the abstract. Don't worry about all the content. There we go. We just got it. No, that's perfect. I'm glad to hear that. And obviously, like you said, if you are wanting to continue your education, and looking for whether it's a dissertation, a thesis, right? However, whatever it's going to be packaged as, I think this goes back to exploring the industry, finding an industry that's growing, and then find information that will be helpful to that industry. And then you
Mhm.
may be a sought after employee and not somebody that's seeking a job. So create your own demand in that way.
Yes, and I think the hardest part for many people is like the cold start problem of, okay, if I want to be able to do this research and to be able to like find my way into this new industry, how do I do it? Whenever I have this conversation with people, I recommend like always be looking at job descriptions that are coming out now. So whether you're a student not going to graduate in a couple of years, whether you're, a tenured employee who isn't looking for a new job at the moment, I think it's always good to look at what is in the job market to be able to see what skills are being asked for, what are the areas that are growing, what are the salaries in different positions to see if that is aligned with what your own personal goals are as well. And by regularly seeing that, you'll be able to like, see what are the skills that you should be pursuing. So like I went through that path of like, needing to know that, if I wanted to get into a life as a data analyst or data scientist, that I needed to know Python. And so that became like an area that I needed to grow and I needed to like demonstrate capability in my Python skills before I even had my first interview.
Yeah, that's part of continuous research, right? Not,
Mhm.
we'll say academic research, but workplace research, industry research, which is always, I mean, you want to be as much as you can at the forefront and ahead of the pack as far as skill development, especially if you're earlier in your career, because if you're planning to work, 30 plus years, every 2 to 4 years, there's gonna be some type of reset, right, with what people are looking
Yes.
for in different industries and in different roles. So, staying on top of, hey, what are some of the leading companies that are in this field, and let's look at their job descriptions. What are the technical skills that they're listing? What are some of the key title roles as well as the tasks that are being requested? Because you can expect that if they're looking for people entering their companies, whether they're new employees or seasoned employees, they're going to want the best of the best, and it's got to align with
Mhm.
that job description. So I think that's really good.
And a lot of those jobs, like they might not even exist, uh, you know, for a while. So when I started undergrad, I the title of data scientist was not something that was used, and eventually, like, ended up becoming a data scientist and working in that for 2 years. But if I started undergrad, like saying I wanted to do that, I maybe would have been pushed into statistics or computer scientist, knowing that careers evolve, jobs evolve, and industries do as well.
Percent. So we're going to get a little bit more broad here with this question. Having gone through your educational journey and workforce and the work you've had along the way, what are a couple items that you think are just crucial for people to do in preparation for and within an interview? You could probably find any influencer that's going to give you 20 pieces of advice, but for you, Tom, what are a couple things that you think are crucial to not only preparing for, but interacting well within that interview itself?
Yes, whenever you're applying to a job, you want to personalize it to that individual job. And the interview is no exception there. So my advice to anyone who's like applying for a job is, again, take the job description and like put that right next to your resume and draw a line between every point of that job description and see, is that being addressed at some point in your resume? Even if it's a gap, you should be able to like speak to that in some way. And I think the interview is the same thing. You go back to the original job description. Ideally, you've saved it, because often by the time you get to the interview, it's often been deleted if they have enough applications. So that's like a quick tip. And then, yeah, making sure that you are addressing all of those points within the interview.
Yeah, and that's perfect because when and as part of my teaching and part of what I do in the day job here is preparing students for that. And it's a lot of exactly what you just said. Where's the job description? Let's look at the company's webpage. Do they have any slogans, mottos? Do they have any like company lingo that would be good to know and even regurgitate, right? If you can find something that's part of their slogan, their motto, or part of like their credo on the main their homepage of their website, and you can even just use. So one thing I use, obviously I work at West Liberty University, caring, quality, affordable. Like the total college experience has been, a mainstay on the homepage of the website for years. And I say, well, if I can find a way, if I was looking to work at West Liberty, I would say, how do I incorporate caring and looking at that college
Mhm.
experience within any role, and how can I incorporate that into questions or into my responses? Because you hope, right? You always hope that if it's something that they're touting on their website that's part of their company culture, those words, even if it's subconsciously, are going to resonate with people, right? If it's something
Yeah.
that they hear every day, they're like, oh yeah, you said caring, that's, oh yeah, I agree, of course I agree with that.
Yeah, I like that for 2 reasons, Chris. Like, 1, it shows that, you've done your homework and you're demonstrating that. But 2 is that with any given job, often a company will, I mean, first of all, they'll receive often hundreds of applications for one position. That's not a joke, and it's probably gotten worse in the past couple of years. So often they'll have multiple people who are qualified on a skills basis to do a particular job. But if they can only hire one person for that role, then it's like those like soft skills that'll like get you over the line. Or about like what is your connection to the mission? Or do you have or are you like putting in more effort than all of the other qualified candidates? So yeah, I like doing your homework is important.
Yeah, not just in school, everybody, in the job search process as well, right? That homework never stops. It's just what are the stakes that are at play, right? It's not just an A or a B anymore. It's an annual salary or wage that comes with this homework. So that's good. So as we wrap up here, I just want to just ask you, and whatever comes out here is going to be fantastic. If you could give one bit of advice, career advice, to yourself 10, we'll say 10-ish years ago, what would that advice be?
I think when I was young, I was too focused on just a single dimension about work. So often you hear some kind of mantra like find a job you're passionate and you never have to work a day in your life. I I don't think that's bad advice per se, but I think it's incomplete. So I think the advice I would give to my younger self is to say, okay, what you're looking for in life is, find something you're passionate about, find something you can be exceptionally good at, find a job that provides an economic engine that helps financially, empower you and empower you and your family, and then find something that can make an impact on the world as well. So those are 4 criteria. The odds are is that any single job that you're able to find might not meet all 4. So don't be afraid to find a job that is able to check 3 of those very important boxes, and then you go ahead and pursue that last box on your own. If it's something like wanting to impact the world. If you can't do that through your job, then that's something you could do with your free time by volunteering. Or if you find a job that, is that you're exceptional at, that you're passionate about and is changing the world, but doesn't have that financial support, then maybe you find another way to be able to, have a side hustle that brings in additional income to support you. So I think that would have been my advice. My advice is to focus in a more broad role of what work can be rather than just, do something that you're very passionate about.
Yeah, that's really good. And because you may have some insight, I don't think there's going to be any trade secrets here in this question or this inquiry more than anything. I think you are in, a role, and your skill set is well positioned to propel you through probably all of your working years, right? With the education you received as well as the skills that you've developed. Are there any other types of industries or skill sets that you think will be in high demand? And I'm not going to ask you to speak to 20 to 30 years from now, but we'll just say within the next 5 to 10 years that you see, an up and to the right as opposed to stagnant or down and to the left, or down and to the right in that case, I guess.
I would go back, yes, to my advice of remain tech savvy and stay on top of develops in any area that you are. So I think healthcare is going to continue to grow. And I think that's going to be very important. Technology as well is going to be important. And if you can get into the STEM side of engineering, I think that that is also important. So, like, not just like manufacturing in an area that could be automated, but helping like work with the systems, I think more broadly would be important. There's been a lot of talk now that like computer scientists, like that's like an out of demand job. I think it will be making a comeback as well.
Okay, there you go. The insight from somebody that's probably had some look at the data, or at least in your free time, right? I'm sure there are these little projects that you look at just for fun, right? We all do. We all have our little niche areas that give us some leisure and some enjoyment. So, Tom, I think I may have buried the lead here, very much so, with some of what you have done in your life professionally. Did you do a guest spot for today?
Yes, so that was one of my, more unexpected experiences. So I'm doing research with Upside all the time, keeping a pulse on consumer behavior. And last summer, I helped provide the insights for a consumer spend report that ended up being featured on the Today Show. And yes, they brought me to be interviewed at 30 Rock, which was a wild experience, but a great opportunity to be able to like tell other people about not just about like Upside and the many users who benefit from the cash back from Upside, but also just about how consuming consumer shopping behavior has changed over the past couple of years.
Not many people can say they've had that opportunity. I think that's we don't want to say that's the top of the mountain here, but I'm sure it will be maybe in the Mount Rushmore, all said and done.
Mhm.
Right, having that
Mhm.
experience to be on the Today Show. I only
Your
aspire.
time will come, Chris. Don't worry.
One day. We can only hope. That's the aspiration, right? We'll hope to get there at one point. So again, Tom, thank you. I always give everybody this opportunity, and don't feel that you have to go into great detail. Somebody recently said, "I feel like I'm about to make an Emmy award-winning speech," because
Hmm.
I would give you the opportunity to shout out any of your mentors, current or former supervisors that have helped kind of put you where you are now, and people that you think deserve recognition for the support that they've provided you over the years.
Yes, I'll go back to some of my higher education days. So Dr. Zemke is someone in undergrad who helped, think about the world in a bigger picture kind of way, and especially explore new developments in the world. So I would say shout out to Dr. Zemke. And then Dr. Brody was a math professor who, helped me go through the basics all over again. I never really liked math, but sometimes we do things we don't like to kind of follow our passions. I was excited about data, just not the math side of it, and so I struggled through many calculus classes in order to be prepared for graduate school. So thank you, Dr. Brody.
There we go. Everybody has those mentors and those people that have helped along the way, as do all of our listeners. If anybody's out there in the listening world thinks that their story would be helpful, right, to anybody navigating the world of work, you can reach out to me, get to me on the socials, get in the DMs, right? However you can get a hold of me. That's how Tom and I got connected. Right? He reached out in the comment, and I said, "You know what, Tom? I think this you would be a good fit." So, Tom, thank you again. Appreciate your insight, wisdom, and thoughts about the wild world of work, really.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity and the conversation, Chris.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Yeah. And you all can listen to our next guest in the next episode of Classroom to Corner Office Career Talks with Chris.